This episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast is presented by Compassion International, and it's the new year. It's 2022. Happy New Year, everyone. And when I'm thinking about the partnerships that we have here at Sports Spectrum, I am so grateful and thankful to have a partnership with Compassion International and thinking about the great organization that they are, the great work that they do, releasing kids from poverty in Jesus' name. I mean, teaching them God's word and helping them live a life that they might not otherwise have lived. Man, what an honor and a privilege to not only partner with Compassion, but to be a Compassion-sponsored parent, if you will. We are people here in the Romano household who sponsor a child with Compassion, and it's one of my great joys to be able to connect with this young boy, to be able to sponsor them, to know that they are loved, for these children to know that they are cared for, to be able to write them letters and then have them write letters back to us, letting them know how they're doing, letting us know what they're interested in. It's really neat to see. And if you're thinking about how can I help a child in need, or how can I get involved with something that's really making a difference in 2022, consider Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. You can learn more. You can donate and sponsor a child over at compassion.com/sports spectrum. Compassion.com/sports spectrum.
This is Sports Spectrum, the intersection of sports and faith, where we bring Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
And welcome, everyone, to the show. I am Jason. So glad you're tuning into our show today, the Sports Spectrum podcast, the intersection of sports and faith. Of course, check out our website, sportspectrum.com. That's the right place to go. That's the only place to go when you want to get content on the intersection of sports and faith, and articles and devotionals and podcasts, all available for free at sportspectrum.com. You can also click on our newly formed store right at the top there, and that will take you to the Increase, where you can order apparel, you can order devotionals and books. I mean, we got the Increase 52-week devotional. There's lots of stuff there. So check out the website, sportspectrum.com. Now, today on the show, it is always awesome when you can bring a friend to Sports Spectrum, and Damien Woody is a longtime friend. I mean, I remember Damien coming out of the NFL, and he played 12 years in the league with the Patriots, the Detroit Lions, and the New York Jets. And I remember at the end of his career in 2009 and 2010, he started to want to dabble into this broadcasting thing, and we actually brought him to ESPN to do a car wash, and he started to impress a lot of us. We're like, this guy's pretty good. And we had him on a bunch of shows, and I'm just grateful that when he retired in July of 2011 at 33 years old, he was able to transition and got a job working at ESPN, and started in August of 2011 in that 2011 season, and now he's been there a decade, 10 years as a broadcaster with ESPN, 12 years as an NFL player, two-time Super Bowl champion. He was part of Tom Brady's first two Super Bowl championships with the New England Patriots back in the early 2000s. And now he's doing his thing as a Boston College alum at ESPN. A dad to 7 kids, by the way. And we talk a lot about being a parent to 7 children, parenting with Christ at the center, social media, how should we respond, and just having conversations. We also talk about his love for the New York Islanders in the NHL. This is a lot of fun, a great conversation with a longtime friend. Damien Woody, 2-time Super Bowl champion, joins us here today on Sports Spectrum. Damien Woody, welcome to Sports Spectrum, buddy. It's so good to see you.
Jason, man, it's a pleasure, man. I've been wanting to come on to your platform for a while. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, no better time than right now to do this, and it is good to see you too. Can you believe it's been 10 years? I was looking at the timeline and the dates. It's been 10 years since you were hired at ESPN. I remember when you came on board at ESPN, wide-eyed and bushy-tailed right out of the NFL, and kind of like, I don't know what this broadcasting thing is, but I'm in it. I'm doing it. And here you are 10 years later. How awesome is that?
Yeah, I didn't expect it, man. I didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you. I did some interning, right before my career ended in the National Football League. And, I knew I wanted to get into broadcast. I just didn't know how long I was going to be in it. Everyone told me, listen, it's a different deal. Just because you played in the National Football League for 12 years doesn't mean you're going to be really good at it. The great thing about coming into ESPN, I had so many people that embraced me right off the bat.
Yeah.
You being one of them, along with a host of other people that really helped me with my transition into television. And here we are 10 years later, man. It's still been a fun ride.
Was it tough when you first came in? Maybe it's still tough to be an analyst and be critical of those guys that you played with and against when you first came into the league? Because I feel like that's one of the biggest struggles for current players when they retire. Immediately, they have to go into sort of analyst mode. And our mutual friend, Jerry Madelon, always said, criticize the performance, not the performer. But was that tough for you to kind of criticize a performance of somebody that you were either friends with or played with or against?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, Jason, it's sports is about relationships as well. And so, just as, Jerry Madelon talked about criticize the performance, there's still a emotional bond. There's a personal bond that you have with a lot of these players and organizations. And, that was the one thing that was, it was very difficult for me because, you have such a affinity towards certain guys and organizations. And for you to be critical, there were many times where I had got conversations like, dude, how could you say that about me? Like, I thought we were boys, but I'm like, listen, this is my job now. It's not personal. I'm just analyzing what you're doing on the football field. That's the way you have to take it. And, it's the same thing for organizations as well. I heard from, obviously the Jets, the Patriots, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, I told people, look, this is my job. Okay. It's not personal towards anyone. I'm just trying to do my job to the best of my ability. And I think over time, every year that I was removed from the National Football League, it became easier and easier to just go about doing what I'm supposed to do.
So it's been 10 years or longer, a little bit more than 10 years, because it was in, I think, August of 2011 when you started, July,
Correct.
When you announced your retirement. Do you have a favorite moment? Is there a moment? It's hard because it's 10 years of moments, but there's got to be one or two that stand out since you've been in this broadcasting world that stands out to you. Maybe one of your favorite times on air or something that happened that was pretty neat. Would you have a moment that stands out?
I do, man. It's there's a couple, but one that really stands out for me was when I had to talk about my former teammate and Tom Brady and the Patriots organization. The topic was Deflategate. And so I'm on set with Teddy Bruschi, and, we're just kind of having a back and forth dialogue. And all of a sudden the temperature on set just kind of went to like 0 to 100.
Yeah, I remember
2
this.
seconds. Yes. And everyone, just talking with everyone after the fact, like, Camby, one of my guys, and Seth and all those guys were like, do we need to like literally step on set live to kind of, make sure everybody's good, because it had risen to that type of level, man. But, that's the thing about television, man. You get into some of these topics, and as a former player, those emotions still are in you and they come out. And it was that way with Teddy and I, but Teddy and I are still really good friends. And it was great TV, to be honest with you.
Well, it's real TV. It's raw, right? Like I don't know. I'm not saying you don't see that all the time, but when you can get raw emotions and transparency happen when you're watching television and not like a contrived 45-second answer or whatever, which I get, guys have to do that. There's something that transfers through to the viewer and there's also a lot to be said. The fact that you guys can shake hands and be like, all right, we got it out, but we're still friends. We still love each other. That's right. Very rare, I feel like, in this business.
Yeah. But you know what, Jason, it's sports. I've told people, I've seen so many times where guys have gotten to fisticuffs in the locker room, and 10 minutes later, they're dapping each other up and hugging each other like, hey, it happened. But then we kiss and made up like 10 minutes later. Like, only that can happen in sports. And I think for me, that's why I love sports. If society reflected sports and how the constructs of a locker room, I think we'll be in a much better place.
Yeah, I do not disagree at all. Damien Woody, who's joining us here on Sports Spectrum. All you got to do is go to your Instagram page, and people might be confused. They might think, okay, this guy played in the NFL for 12 years, two-time Super Bowl champion. He talks about, football on ESPN for a living. But all I see is a lot of Islanders posts from you at Islanders games, wearing Islanders jackets. You were just at the Islanders inaugurated game, I guess, for their new stadium, their new arena. Where did this sort of fandom for the Island? Because you only played a couple years in New York with the Jets. So it's not like you were born and bred in the sense of being a New York guy since you were little, but suddenly you've become sort of this de facto celebrity Islanders fan, which I think is great, by the way. When did this come about? Yeah, man,
it's first of all, it's just been fantastic. But this all started like 2 years ago, back in 2019. I'm actually, sitting on my couch. I'm watching Giants play. It was during the football season, and both teams were just awful. They were just two awful games. And then I just started thinking about the New York sports scene in general. The Knicks stunk, like the Nets were awful. The Rangers were awful. I'm like, my God, like the New York
Mets,
sports
by
team,
the way. Don't forget about
Mets,
my Mets.
I can't forget about the Mets. I'm like, the New York sports scene is an absolute mess. And then a fan of the Islanders tweeted me. He was like, "Hey, Wood." And then he had like this waving emoji. He was like, "Listen, the Islanders on a 9-game winning streak. We don't suck over here." And then the Islanders tweeted in and was like, "Hey, how about you come to the game and check us out?" And so we actually, we started having a correspondence. And then they arranged for my wife and I to come to a game. And we made it into a cool deal where we brought, I picked like 10 fans to come to the game with me to have an experience. And so we did that. And then once we went, it was just such an experience that the organization treated my wife and I so well. And just being at that hockey game, it was a totally different experience live. And I was hooked. I was hooked at that point. And then from that moment on, man, I just became a fan of the Islanders.
There's something about hockey in person that is so special and unique, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Because it's you watching these big guys on ice just skating so gracefully, and then there's a violence to it. There's a lot of skill and art that goes along with it. And I tell people all the time, there's no experience like going to a hockey game live. Like everyone should experience that at least one time.
What'd you think of the new arena?
Oh, it's Jason. Let me tell you something. They didn't spare not one expense with building that arena. We actually on Saturday we started our day in Boston. I went to my alma mater, Boston College, where we had a on the field ceremony, and then we literally left the game early because I'm like, I get the USB arena. We had, I gotta go to the home opener.
That's like a 4-hour drive, right?
It is, man. And we were stuck in awful traffic getting to Long Island. But the arena itself, we pulled up. I'm like, man, this place is like a casino because it's all lit up and bright and everything. It is just a beautiful building, man. And it's going to be great for all Islanders fans, just attending this venue.
It's so funny to me that you becoming an Islanders fan, if you will, or going to a game or taking that experience starts from Twitter. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but it just made me think about this sort of love-hate relationship that pretty much every person I know has with social media, particularly with Twitter. I like Instagram too, but Twitter is a different beast where you're just reacting the second things happen and you're sharing your opinions the second things are happening. And you almost have to be aware in a way of what you're posting and knowing that people are going to come back at you because you have a big platform. At this point, at this juncture, now that we're past a decade, I would imagine, being on social media, what is your sort of thoughts now in where we stand today with a place like Twitter and a place like social media?
Well, I think, listen, it's all of what you make it out to be, right? I think, when it comes to social media, particularly Twitter, since this is a topic, it can be a cesspool. Obviously, with anything like this, there's a lot of bad characters out there, but it's also can be, a beautiful place where you share information, share experiences, gather information. So listen, I'm the type of person that I like to have fun. I like to joke around. I like to interact with people on Twitter. and just have fun with it. I don't engage with all the what I call the nonsense and the negativity. I just don't do that. I've always, like, my parents and my grandparents always used to tell me, like, be careful what you feed your soul. Like, be careful what you engage in, because ultimately what you take in is what you're going to spit out. And so for me, I just try to have fun. Jason, one thing about me, man, is I'm an easygoing guy. I don't, I'm not into, I just like seeing people smile, have fun, all those type of things. And that's what I try to do on Twitter.
Yeah. It's an interesting place because all of us have, pride, I guess, in a little bit in there to have an opinion. And then when somebody comes and disagrees, especially on a really sensitive topic, right? Like it could be on race, or it could be on COVID or the pandemic or politics or whatever it is, which I try to avoid most of those on social media. I'd rather talk person to person about things like that if people want to. But we all get our feelings hurt a little bit. We can all stand up and just say, okay, whatever, ignore that post. But there's still a humanity to it in some weird way. How have you been able to manage that, especially you've been on this platform for a long time? I remember when you had just retired, you were on Twitter. So that has to be at least 10 years. How have you kind of managed to, I'm sure you've had your faults and your mistakes, just like we all have, or those moments, I wouldn't even call them mistakes, where you've gotten back at people on social media. What's that been like for you, this sort of evolution for 10 years now?
Yeah, listen, I think for me, it's, I've been evolving on social media. I don't try to avoid, the tough conversations, because I think there's something to be learned on both ends, whether you agree or disagree. I actually like the disagreements because, I don't want to be in an echo chamber. I don't want to be in a bubble. I want to be able to see all versions, because I think that's how we as humans evolve. If everyone's the same, we don't evolve. So for me, when these tough topics come up on Twitter, I just look at it from the perspective of, I'm trying to learn. I want to learn, even if it's nonsense. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt to see where you're coming from. If I don't agree, fine, I'll let you know. We will agree to disagree, but I don't try to get too emotionally charged where, like the great Herm Edwards said, think before you press send. Think before you press send. I just, my motto with Twitter is, I have more to lose than gain. If you put something stupid out there, it can hurt me more than it hurt probably the average person on Twitter. So I try to engage, on the tough topics. But ultimately, man, I just try to have fun on Twitter, man, because this world, there's a lot of darkness in this world, a lot of negativity, a lot of things that's going on. And I just try to bring the light into any situation, whether it be social media or just in person with someone.
Yeah. And you do that well. And it's interesting to me because there's many people that I know on social media, know personally, who I disagree with on different topics, who maybe has a different thought process or even a different background or a different race, different religion, all of those things. But because I know that person, I'm inclined to at least listen to them a little bit more. But it feels like it's people who have no idea who you are, who have never met you. And those are the people that come in and want to just rip you apart. And if they disagree with you, you're canceled to them, or whatever the word is that's being used today. Whereas if I know someone, I'm inclined to have a little more empathy and to listen and to have conversations with people because I know them.
Right.
I have to imagine that's been the case with you as well.
Oh, absolutely. There's some people out here that just have an agenda to basically stir it up, because I always say that when think about what sells today, drama, dividing us is actually profitable. Think about that. That's a big part of what's going on out here in society. It's profitable to keep people divided. So again, for me, I go back to what values do I have? Ultimately, I want to bring people together. We may disagree on topics, but that doesn't mean I have to be nasty about it. Doesn't mean I have to be, ugly. We just disagree. But I try to find common ground with people. And I think for me, if more people try to find common ground, on things that, you know, that we can relate to, I think we would be a lot better off, because guess what? We have more in common than we have, you know, differences. It's just that people don't see that in a world where, again, it's profitable to keep us divided.
Yeah. I read a book recently called, it was just called Hate. And just the title alone was like, whoa. And it had a picture of an anchor from, I think, MSNBC and an anchor from Fox News, right? And they're both clearly on different sides of the spectrum, reaching for different audiences, inclined to what I would think is to divide, right? Because they're only really reporting one side of one story or whatever it is. But I read this book, and it wasn't like a Christian book or anything like that for those listening that might be thinking, oh, I got to get this. But what it really opened my eyes to was exactly what you just said, which is their job is to divide. And honestly, they pointed to the sports world. And I don't mean this sports is sports, right? Sports is such a great uniter in so many ways, but it's also a divider in so many ways too. There's a reason why every single week on ESPN, they're talking about the Cowboys, because you either love them or you hate them. There's no middle ground. And I thought, wait a minute, for sports, that's great. But for the news and for those worlds, that's not a good idea to be thinking about, well, there's either people who love this or hate this. So let's go after one or the other and talk about it and make sure that people are staying on their sides. And I thought that's dangerous, because where are you going to find the truth? Where are you going to find what's actually really happening versus opinion? And what about uniting, right? Like the Bible talks all about bringing people together and uniting and there having be unity within the body. That's gone, I feel like. And I hope we can bring that back. I really do.
Yeah. I absolutely agree, man. And I think I'm the type of person, Jason, is, you know, I live in New Jersey, for everyone out there. And New Jersey, one thing New Jersey is known for is diners. Okay. There's like a diner on every block. Yeah. And I'm the type of person that, you know, let's sit down and break bread together.
Yes.
The best conversations usually happen over a meal. That you can have the toughest conversations over a meal. And so, you know, social media, like you can only go so far when it comes to resolving these type of things. But that's why I just love that person to person, you know, connection, because I can look in your eyes. I can, you know, eye contact. I can talk to you. You can talk to me while we're just eating a meal. You know, just, you know, I just, I don't know, man. Just like, you know, I think about like Jesus and the 12 disciples, how they, you know, breaking bread together. You know, for me, I look at that's a way to really connect with people. It's just breaking bread together and talking through things. Because again, I feel like we have more in common than differences. We just need to get out of our bubbles, get out of our own way, and we can actually see that.
Damien Woody is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. Let's talk about your faith a little bit and your journey with God and that role of faith in your life. Where did that take shape for you? What was that like for you, kind of maybe growing up and all the way to where you are today?
Yeah, man, that started, you know, that was at home. My you know, both of my parents, and particularly my grandparents. I actually split time living with my parents and my grandparents, because my mom, who at the time was single, she was going through transition. So my mom thought it would be better for me to live with my grandparents. My grandparents are very, you know, both of them have passed away, but they were very, you know, it was a very Christian home, a lot of structure. My grandfather was a deacon in church. My grandmother, they were faith leaders in our town. And so the structure I grew up in was, we had, Bible lessons every night, at night before we went to bed. We had, church every Sunday, every Wednesday Bible study. And so I grew up in a very Christian home, and I gave my life to Christ at 8 years old. And for me, man, it's always those beginnings, because my grandfather used to always talk about, a house built on solid ground. You don't want your house built on sand. You want your house built on solid ground. And so for me, and he used to tell me all the time, there's going to come many moments in life where you're going to stray away, because that's just, that's our flesh. That's our human nature. You're going to stray away. Things are going to happen. But if you have that foundation, you always come back home. And, and for me, that's kind of encapsulate my whole experience where, literally my upbringing, I'm rooted here. I go off to college, early part of my pro career. I'm straight away. But then I come back home. And a lot of that is, just my foundation, my wife, like just having people in your life, man, who are Christ-like, who are grounded, man, it just, it helped me evolve into the person that I am today, the father figure who leaves his home for his children in a Christ-like manner. So the word is very important to me. It's how I live my life, how I teach my children. Now I got adult children, and sometimes they're it's funny because they're in the stage that I was in,
yes.
where they have questions, and I just tell them all the time, you're going to stray away, but your upbringing ultimately it's going to bring you right back home. You are going to be rooted into what we've taught you from the Bible, and so it's just been a great dynamic and a great situation for me my whole life.
Well, you mentioned your kids. You got 7 kids, probably 7 different personalities, 7 different takes, 7 different outlooks on life in different ways. How were you able to do that as a dad and kind of keep the main thing while still allowing them to spread their wings a little bit and to learn about this thing called life?
Yeah, listen, I think, you bring up a great point, because when you have 7 kids, think about it. You have 7 different personalities, and then they are affected by their surroundings. So they have their own friends that they're hanging around, people that help influence them, whether, be in a positive or negative manner. So for both my wife and I, the thing that we just try to teach them, and for like my adult kids, we always tell them, you're in different seasons of your life now. We're here to help try to guide you. You got to make the decisions, but we're here to guide you. But ultimately how we went about parenting was, and we literally held up the Bible. He's like, and that's the iPad, but you see this book right here?
Yeah.
This book, this Bible is the key to life. It's a roadmap. Okay. We try to teach you guys the roadmap. There'll be times where you stray off the road, but this is the GPS to get you right back on the road. And so that's the kind of way that we try to phrase it, especially with these new age kids with the technology. We just try to, phrase it into ways that, that makes a lot of sense to them. And so for us, we're just like the Bible is your GPS.
Man, that's a good way to look at it. I like to say, as long as we are all pointing to the same North Star, we can kind of ride on different roads a little bit, but let's all make sure that we're the destination, as you mentioned on your GPS, is taking us to the same spot.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
really
right.
Good. That's what it's all about, man. It's at the end of the day, man. We need to be one in Christ. Christ knows that we are not like, we're made in His image, but He gave us free will. We're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes, but as long as we get back on that road and we head in that same direction, we'll be okay. We'll be okay.
Yeah. As you were evolving into a pretty good football player, you went to Boston College and obviously had a great career in college because you were a first round selection in the NFL in 1999 by the New England Patriots. This was right before they started going on their run. And it's weird enough, here we are in 2021 and they're on another run. They're having a great season this year with a rookie quarterback, and Coach Belichick is showing how good he really is as a head coach right now. But when you came into this league, you're a first rounder. So there's expectations. You're an offensive lineman. So it's maybe not all the praise and the glory that the quarterback or the wide receiver might get, but you're coming to a team that's about to go on a pretty cool run here. But for you, when you came into the league, let's talk again about your faith. Was it a life of faith, living a life of faith, easier or a little harder than you thought? Or maybe how did that grow and evolve again? There's that word when you came to the NFL, because that's a different animal. That's a different beast than being a college football player.
For me, it actually made it easier. And the reason I say that is because when I first came in, there were a lot of people coming at me about different things, and a lot of it wasn't great. But because of the lessons that I learned, the village that I call it the village of people that influenced me when I was young, like how my grandparents raised me, it allowed me to what I call stiff arm a lot of the nonsense that was coming my way and focus on what was really important. My wife and I, we had our first child. And for me, it was like, and you hear it all the time, faith, family, football. And it was really that in that order for me. In order for me to be successful at anything, if I'm not grounded in my faith, nothing matters. Nothing matters at all. And then obviously, for my family being the head of the household and the one that's ultimately teaching our family the way we should live our lives. And then as far as football is concerned, that was just gravy because God gave me a gift. He gave me a gift. And if I nurture that gift, it was going to blossom. And so for me, going through training camp and all those type of things, I knew it was just a process. I knew there were things that I would go through that, it was a test. God would, testing my will. That's fine. That's fine. Everyone goes through tests. Everyone goes through trials and tribulations. But ultimately, I got God on my side.
Yeah.
If I got God on my side, I can't be defeated. And so for me, I just kept that perspective, man. And it led to a great, like a great transition for me at the start of my career. And I had some really cool people, man. Really cool people who really influenced me. And I want to point out one person. His name is Anthony Pleasant. That dude was, God puts people in your life for a reason.
Yeah.
And that dude, man, he wrapped his arms around me like at the beginning of my career. And he always used to tell me, he used to call me Doc. He said, Doc, what you feeding your soul today? What you feeding your soul today? Are you eating junk food or are you eating that good food? And he wasn't talking about food. He was talking about the food from the Bible.
Yeah.
And it was just like, man, like God knows, like he knows like what you need. He knows what you need. And because I got that early in my career, I feel fortunate. I got that early in my career where I had someone who, and I wasn't struggling with my faith, but someone who was there to just keep lifting me up, keep me accountable. Because of that, man, my foundation was just so solid. It just helped me throughout my 12-year career.
Did you find yourself becoming an Anthony Pleasant to others as you got older?
Absolutely.
And becoming a veteran in your NFL career?
Absolutely, man. As I became older, particularly like during my Jets career, I just found myself just wrapping my arms around guys. Because Anthony Pleasant, who I call him AP, he was kind of like behind the scenes just talking to guys, especially myself. He would, people would leave and then he would see me at the locker. Hey man, let's go to the lunchroom. Let's talk a little bit. Let's talk about the word and just chop it up about what's on your mind. How are you living? He always asks you, man, how you living? And I would do the same thing, with the Jets. I still do it today with some of those guys over there. I reach out to those guys and just, invite them over to the house, just how are you living? What's the word? How can I be of service to you? What do you need? And so I just try to pay it forward. Just pay it forward, man, because ultimately that's how you build the kingdom, right? That's how you build the kingdom.
That's discipleship. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really well said. When you transitioned out of the game, and we talked about coming right to broadcasting. I mean, you retired on July 26, 2011, and you started at ESPN in August of 2011. So there was something to transition to, but we both know this. So many guys come out of the league and that identity is gone because that's all you've been doing for years. Your identity was found in football, and now it's not. Even if you're talking about it, it's sort of still missing, right? Because you're not in that locker room. You're not getting ready. You're not putting on those pads. And by the way, when you retired, you were, I think, 33 years old. You're younger by just a couple months than Tom Brady, your former teammate, and he's still playing, which is, I mean, we can talk about that in a second. That's just ridiculous when you think about it. And you've been out of the league now a decade. But was that transition hard for you? Was that difficult, or was that easier because you had the ESPN thing to fall back on?
No, listen, it was difficult because there's an adrenaline that you can't manufacture. You know, you can't manufacture. There's nothing out here that can manufacture, 70,000 to 80,000 people either cheering you on or just booing you. It's just, I can't explain it to people. It's just, it's an unreal experience. The camaraderie in the locker room, it's hard to manufacture. But, for me, when I transitioned to television, I just try to think of it as, you know what, this allows me to be close to the game. And there's something about when that red light comes on. There's no do-overs.
You just got to play. You got to go.
You got to just play it. You got to play it. And to me, it was the art of, when that red light comes on, being at your very best. Just like in football, when that kickoff happens, there are no do-overs. Like, you got to go. You got to be at your very best. And for me, that's what television, when I first started, that's what television was. When that red dot comes on, that red light comes on, I need to be at my very best. I need to be informative, be funny, be who I am on television. And I'll say at the beginning, that was tough because I tried, in my mind, I figured I need to try to be like this guy or that guy. And ultimately I had, advice from multiple people, whether it was either Seth Markman or just a litany of people just said, you know what? This was one piece of advice someone gave me. I want Twitter Damien on TV. I want Twitter Damien on TV because Twitter Damien was, they were like, he's funny, he's combative, he's a straight shooter. And once they said that to me, I'm like, you know what? That is exactly how I am on Twitter. So they were like, just bring that to television. We can reel you back in. We can do that, but we can't. It's hard to push people to be that way. And so I just started applying that. And for me, that's when things really started to take off.
Nice. Well, it's been awesome to watch you kind of grow in your career. And I'm glad you're still there. And I'm glad you're still doing your thing with the worldwide leader in sports. Damien, as we wind down, the question I ask a lot of our guests here on the show, I'm curious to what your answer might be. What are you learning from God today where he has you? You mentioned adult children, 7 kids. You married, I think you told me off the air, 21 years, right? So congratulations there. Yep. What's God showing you and teaching you right now in the season of life you're in?
Oh, man. He's teaching me, God is teaching me patience. He's teaching me patience. You can't have everything you want right when you want it. My grandma used to tell me all the time, he may not come when you want, but he's always on time.
Yeah.
And so, and I think, and it's really been true. Like, I've been so fortunate and blessed throughout my life with being able to do a lot of cool things and, meeting a lot of amazing people. But the one thing I think, right now, God's just like, especially with my children, be patient with them. Because just like I told you, like, there were certain seasons and chapters in my life where, I was one way and then I strayed off the road, got off the GPS and then came back on. It's the same thing with like my adult children. He's like, be patient. That's what he's telling me. Be patient. Everything will work out fine. You'll see. And for me and my wife, that's really been like the overall theme of everything. It's just patience and persistence in everything that we do and having all of that Bible-centric.
Yeah.
If you do that, you'll be just fine.
So this will be my last question. What do you think you want to see happen in the next it's been 10 years since you retired. What's the next 10 years look like besides broadcasting? I'm assuming that's something you'd like to continue to do, but what does that look like? Have you thought about other ventures in other areas and other things to kind of get involved in? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, listen, for me, it's all about, it's all about children. Both my wife and I, we're big on what do we want our legacy to be? When they speak on, Damien Woody and Nicole Woody, what do we want people to think? And yeah, like, the whole, the NFL stuff is cool. And I was able to do some cool things, but I want to be able to have a bigger impact with the people, the younger generation that's coming up. I want to affect them in mind, body, and spirit. Like, I want them to understand Christ, understand what Christ can do for you, the role he can play in your life, the foundation he can have, the roadmap the road that he can put you on. And if I can do that with the platform that I have, with everything that he's blessed me with, man, I can affect so many lives, man, because it doesn't have to be, like anything crazy. If I'm just 1, 2, 3, if I can just pull some of these younger kids, lift them up, to me, that's a job well done. I want to be able to affect the younger generation.
And maybe some grandbabies will be in the picture in 10 years too.
Absolutely. Listen, that's some time away. That's some time
but
away.
I'm talking about 10 years from now.
Yeah, I know. 10 years from now. Yeah, absolutely, man. And, we just have this vision, like, Thanksgiving is one of our favorite holidays because we're able to gather and give thanks for everything that God has blessed us with, man. And I just remember growing up, like, Thanksgiving in our home, just how big it was and how festive it was. And to be able to kind of have that in our home, that would mean everything to me.
Well, I mean, imagine yourself at like 60 years old and you have, like, I don't know how many, you put 7 kids times 2 kids per 7 kids. Now you got 14 grandkids just tearing up the house at Thanksgiving. How amazing would that be?
Oh yeah. I was just, like I told Nicole, I'm like, our kids would just hate us so bad because the way we would spoil the kids would just be, it wouldn't be a good thing. But I'm like, at the end of the day, we would hand the kids back, because that's our job. But I'm looking forward to that.
My friend, it's so good to have chatted with you. So good to catch up with you. I need to connect with you closer because I'm still here in Bristol. So, like, I don't know why we couldn't just go get that meal at a diner and spend some time together and break some bread. But it's been great to catch up with you here on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
And many thanks to my friend Damien Woody, the 2-time Super Bowl champion, for being here today on Sports Spectrum. So much fun catching up with him. And I hope you guys could sense the type of person that he is. Just such a great dude who, like he said, always wants to have fun, not afraid to tackle tough issues, but really is about unity and love that the gospel and the word is at the center of his life and his family's life. So much fun talking to my friend Damien Woody here on Sports Spectrum. Definitely follow him on Twitter and Instagram. Just thinking about the pictures that he's been posting recently, especially about his love for the New York Islanders and how he's become a de facto Islanders hockey fan. He posts about that on social. It'd be a lot of fun to follow along on his journey, but also let him know that you heard his story here on Sports Spectrum, a story that a lot of guys don't hear about, not just Damien's, but any other athlete or former athlete that we've had on. They don't get to talk about things like this on a lot of platforms. And so we're just grateful that he was willing to come on. We're grateful that God has entrusted us to have a platform like this in Sports Spectrum, and just grateful that you listened, to be honest with you. Just thankful for you and thankful for Damien. If you liked what you heard, do us a favor, share this conversation with someone that you know, maybe a Jets fan or a Patriots fan, maybe a football fan, maybe just someone who loves Christ and you want to encourage them in their faith. Please consider sharing this podcast with someone you know. And then also consider this too, if you could, subscribe to this podcast so that you never miss an episode of Sports Spectrum. We're releasing quite a few episodes now in this 2022 year, at least 3 a week. And so we don't want you to miss any episodes. We've got some amazing conversations coming up later this month, and certainly as football enters into the playoff picture and then into the Super Bowl, we'll have a lot more amazing football conversations. But we can't do it without you, really, subscribing, listening, sharing, and telling others about Sports Spectrum. And then our ultimate goal is that people hear about Jesus. That's really it. We want to be a resource, a vessel, a guide to point to that North Star that I referred to in the conversation with Damien, to point to Christ. So we love you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and hopefully you'll join us again next time right here on Sports Spectrum. My name's Jason. We love you. Have a great rest of your day, and Happy New Year.